Sound. Sound. Check.
Okay.
You don't have to pass on too far. And then when we do have questions, then we'll use number one.
Okay.
Or whoever is answering the questions from two.
Right, sure.
Will go through to the room.
Cool.
Happy?
Sure. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Members of the Fourth Estate, good morning and happy Monday. I trust you are all well. The name is Mabina Siabe. I am the campaign manager for the Joburg mayoral candidate. I am esteemedly joined by the National Leader, Mzansi Zibi, who also chairs the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. We're also joined by our National Chairperson, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa, who serves as the Gauteng MEC for Agriculture, Rural Development, and Economic Development. The powerhouse of Gauteng. I am also joined by our Chief Organiser, who is also the newly elected Chairperson of the Impeachment Committee, as well as our Joburg mayoral candidate, Lukhona Mnguni. We thought it important that we convene this media briefing to give an outline on where we are as an organization as we head into the 2026 local government elections, and also just to give insights into the work that we're doing at the various spheres of government that we operate, as well as the work that we're doing to consolidate social democratic politics in South Africa. And with those few words, I'll hand over to our national leader.
Thanks very much, Vincent. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our new offices. We're still moving in, so forgive the clumsy environment. It's not out of disrespect to you. There is no doubt in the minds of South Africans that the country is in some trouble. The economic recovery is too slow and will take a very long time unless some decisive actions are taken. And I'm quite happy to talk about those at question time, what those could be. But for a long time now, we have said that local government is one of the weakest links in our economic recovery story. Every business, informal or not, large or small, depends on the quality of municipal services and local infrastructure to sustain its operations and to grow. When these fall apart, as they have been in municipalities across the country, it matters very little what national government does. Or what it plans to do. Local government will almost always sabotage the interventions of local and provincial government because municipalities are not able to step up to the plate. From my observations as the chairperson of SCOPA, I think I've said on more than one occasion that one of the biggest problems is the quality of the political leadership in municipalities. It truly is exceptionally weak in most municipalities. These are the people who take strategic and financial decisions worth billions of rand. They choose the officials that are going to fill the executive roles in the municipality. And when the political heads are weak, you are guaranteed. There hasn't been a single time in the work that we've done since last year where you've got poor political leadership and excellent administrators. There isn't one. And I'm quite happy to talk about each one at some detail. So the quality of the political leadership matters because that is where the decisions are made. But that is why, as Rice Mzansi and Good have announced two serious and capable mayoral candidates in the city of Johannesburg, Lukhona to my right, and in the city of Cape Town, it is Brett Heron, whose mayoral candidacy we launched yesterday. These are two cities that collectively command upwards of 25% of the country's GDP, with budgets amounting to approximately 180 billion combined. In Johannesburg, we have put forward Lukhona, who has said we need to clean out Johannesburg. I'm a seller out. And I'm a seller right across the board, by the way. You get them in political office, from numerous political parties. You get them in the administration. You also get them in the business ecosystem that profits from the networks that loot municipalities and the city of Johannesburg. In Cape Town, Brett has said where you live matters. As you know, we've said a lot about spatial justice, spatial development, and thinking about that differently in order to solve multiple problems: transport infrastructure, the cost of living, housing, etc., etc. Rise Mzansi therefore encourages South Africans to go and register, firstly, and if they're already registered, to make sure that they're registered correctly. One of the things we experienced in 2024 is that you found that somebody is in Johannesburg, they want to vote for Rise Mzansi, but they can also do so on the national ballot because they're otherwise registered in KZN or they're registered in the Eastern Cape and so on. So the message to all South Africans, whether they're voting for Rise Mzansi or not, is make sure you are registered correctly. If you've moved from the area in which you used to live, make sure you're registered in the correct ward and in the correct voting district so that you can participate. But it is at the local government level where the promises of democracy in general, and I think where social democratic politics matters. These are the ideals of solidarity, equality, and dignity, because abstract political theories otherwise do not matter much. Local government is at the center of what really affects people, what affects people's life. And I think even if we talk about quality of life, until we fix local government, we are not going to get far. The working relationship between Good and Rise Mzansi means that we have a spread of elected public representatives across national, provincial, and local governments, serving both in the executive and in opposition benches across Gauteng, the Western Cape, the Northern Cape, as well as the Eastern Cape. So voters have an alternative, safe and ethical vote that will deliver in Rise Mzansi and Good. So let me talk about a couple of things. So in addition to this, the first is the impeachment committee. So we welcome the election of our chief organizer, my colleague next to me and fellow MP Makashule Gana, as chair of the impeachment committee. He is involved in the process, and any of you that want to ask him questions, you can do so. I'll just say two things about this. The first is that there are people who appear to believe that the impeachment committee chair is a judge. And I know that the people in the room know that that is not the case, because the chairperson is not a dictator. The most important responsibility of a chair is to make sure that we have a process that reflects the relevant constitutional provisions. We have a process that reflects and gives meaning to the rules of parliament, as well as applicable legislation, so that we run a credible process. We have never had an impeachment in South Africa of a president. Of a judge, yes, we've had. Of a public protector, yes, we've had. Of a president, we have not had one. It's an extremely serious matter that cannot be left to silly political theatrics. You need somebody who's got the temperament, somebody who's got the experience. Makashule has been in parliament for more than one term. People forget he was a DA MP. He's on the rules committee. He's on the ethics committee. He's a caucus whip representing all the other political parties from the IFP on down. Now, a lot of people might not know because he drives a gambling issue in public, which we'll talk about as well. But you do need a certain level of experience, a certain temperament, and a certain level of credibility with a cross-section of political parties. That's the first thing. The second thing is you do need somebody who is going to honor the grave constitutional moment in which we are. There are people who believe that in order to do the job properly, you need to have settled on an outcome. And that makes you credible. It can't work that way, because this process is being carried out on behalf of the South African people. But Gana has got a lot of experience at provincial government. He's been an MPL. He's also been a member of council in the city of Johannesburg before Joburg collapsed. So he's somebody that we back fully. And the decision to put up a hand was carefully considered. We understood the political dynamics, and we understood one thing in particular. Anybody who was serious about being chair would need to secure the vote of the kingmaker, the DA. Of the two camps between the ANC on the one hand and the other political parties on the other hand, if they didn't have the support of the DA, they're out. And anybody who knows anything about arithmetic can work that out. And so when we set about having discussions on the Sunday with other political parties, we knew we needed to secure the support of the DA. And in the first meeting that took place that day, it was actually the Democratic Alliance that nominated Makashule to be chair. Wanda Mahlatsi was the other nominee, and then the third nominee was Musi Maiman. So he was always in the mix, and people knew that. And I just want to say, anybody who says they wanted to be chair and never spoke to the DA, they were never serious about being chair. That's just how numbers work. If they had said no, and the ANC had said no, we wouldn't have bothered. So it's important that we understand that also the craft of politics in a coalition environment is also important, instead of just shouting insults on Twitter. Let me just talk about the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. So one of the decisions we took as a committee is that we need to take our time. So firstly, to stop the practice of following news headlines, calling people, shouting at them, and then you never hear about the issue ever again, because it was about the theatrics. We need to take our time. We need to do inquiries where we need to do inquiries. We need to work closely with the Auditor General. We need to work closely with the Special Investigating Unit, because there's also capability that Parliament does not have. To give an example, the oversight process over BCM and OR Tambo began in March last year. We are going to deliver our report to Parliament this year, because we've had 12 months to observe, make initial observations, walk with them through the period of a year, call them to Parliament to account, and then make decisive observations and recommendations to the National Assembly and to other entities. We've done the inquiry into the Road Accident Fund. We're writing the report now. We can talk about that at question time. The point I'm making is the committee took a decision not to focus on the theatrics of what happens on a particular day and get the headlines and move on. We've told each of the entities that we are on a journey with them until 2029. It doesn't stop. The city of Johannesburg, after next year's elections, believe me, whoever is mayor of the city of Johannesburg will appear before scope to account for what has happened in this financial year. Because if we don't do that, you cannot track the progress. You end up dealing with procurement only. So it's important. And I know the issue of the Road Accident Fund Chief Executive is topical. Anybody wants to ask a question, they can. Then there's a Gauteng government. And I do need to say this in respect of all of us. One of the things that's important when you're having conversations with voters is, what is your track record? What do you do when you govern? And one of the conscious decisions we took from way before the election is that we are going to be serious people who can be trusted with big responsibilities. If you can't do that from whatever position we secure in the election, then you can't. And our reputation in Parliament, I was talking about Gana's responsibilities. I'm about to talk about Vuyiswa's responsibilities. We've built a reputation for being serious about our work, being as professional as possible, just disavowing the silly theatrics of politics and getting the job done. That comes with rewards, because other political parties and coalition partners trust you to do stuff. And it is in that context that we have the biggest MEC portfolio in Gauteng: agriculture, rural, and economic development. The economic development portfolio is actually the one that is at the leading edge of driving, I think, the third or fourth largest economy in the continent, which is the Gauteng region, with its metros, Ekurhuleni, city of Johannesburg, city of Tshwane, as well as surrounding municipalities. You've got everything from the agricultural sector to industry to the financial sector and so on. So this is a very critical portfolio. But Vuyiswa has been busy, and I'll just highlight a couple of things. I think we had said we need new leaders who can do things differently. Vuyiswa has been decisive and immediately decisive in her responsibilities, especially when she has found wrongdoing. Do you remember those funny things with the project out on the East Rand in Ekurhuleni? She exposed it. It was in the paper. People got to read about it. Later on, I had somebody saying, but how can you take the portfolio when there's so much corruption? The corruption that she exposed, by the way. Because also people have a funny way of thinking about it. When she got into the economic development portfolio, you know that at the Gauteng Liquor Board, there had been an investigation. She took decisive action again. The number of illegal liquor outlets that have crept up because of the dysfunction in that organization, 200,000 illegal liquor outlets. In a country that has got one of the highest per capita consumptions of alcohol and alcoholism and so on. So that is one. So there's driving economic growth. She can talk about it herself. There's also demonstrating that proper governance matters and decisive action when you're in government matters. There are also other things that people don't realize are important because we don't see that that Gauteng actually has a significant agri portfolio. Foot and mouth disease, I was saying, if she hears FMD one more time, she's going to die. But they're coordinating the government's response on foot and mouth disease in the province of Gauteng. And you'll also remember that we campaigned on hunger. One of the reasons we accepted this portfolio and we're very excited about is that we campaigned on eliminating hunger. The agri portfolio provides us an opportunity to drive a program to eliminate hunger. And the Zero Hunger campaign to combat food insecurity happened under my colleague, the MEC, over here. Let me also talk about some of the issues. I mean, immigration is an issue in the country at the moment. We can talk about it in more detail. But I'll say these three things about immigration because I think it's important. It's clear that for decades, we have had an evolving immigration crisis where the government's ability to manage the problem and process it correctly has been degrading over time. One of the reasons we were grey listed by the Financial Action Task Force is that our borders are porous. You've got people setting up in South Africa to run criminal syndicates, to finance terrorism in other parts of the country and so on. That speaks to the national and regional security aspect of immigration. So what I'm trying to say that proper broad border control and border security is an imperative for any country that wants to keep itself and its neighbors safe. And I'm also saying this to say there is a technique to say if you're not saying people must be beaten up, you want open borders. No, that's not what we're saying. We need a properly functioning immigration system. If somebody applies for asylum, they need to be processed, and the process needs to complete within the allocated time, because you then turn them into an unlawful resident in the country because you have not completed the process. It also does not help when you've got corruption in the system. So we need to have a systematic response to the immigration problem. When your borders are not secure, you deport people, they're back next week, or they're back in 2 weeks' time, because you have not solved the problem systematically. So that's really important, that we make sure that all our systems work. The second thing, let us just implement South Africa's laws the way that they should. It's not complicated. The reason that we've got this crisis is that we've simply failed to implement our own laws. So that is the second thing. What Rise Mzansi will never condone is anyone hitting the streets, getting into somebody's home and beating them up and taking the place of the government, which is also not allowed to get in anywhere and beat someone up. That we will never condone. So here's my advice. If any South African citizen believes that somebody has broken the law, whether it is immigration-related law, please go and report them to the authorities. If the authorities don't respond, we've got MPs here who've got access to ministers and the like, and we'll deal with it. But I just want to say on a personal note, when I voted in 1994, it was the time that the genocide in Central Africa, in Rwanda and Eastern DRC happened. It is easy for people to get carried away when you've got irresponsible leaders who want to gain popularity by leveraging the real grievances of the South African people to drive them to do things which are going to get them into trouble. And when they get in trouble, they are not there with a lawyer to help them. Because that's what's happening. People are losing a sense of the responsibilities of leadership to keep society stable, to keep society safe, to hold government accountable to do its work. And I know the password for political acceptability for some people is to endorse anarchy. Rise Mzansi is not a party of anarchy. We've said we're the party of the rule of law. The rule of law means implementing South Africa's laws in line with our constitutional principles and be uncompromising about it. Nothing about that says you've got a license to look at my colleague next to me here and say he's too dark, and because he can't speak isiZulu or another language like isiXhosa, you are going to beat him up because he happens not to have his ID, which he does not have an obligation to carry, by the way, in terms of our law. Because that is what's going to happen. Go to Twitter. The xenophobic comments about my colleague are already there because of his skin tone. They can deny it, but those are the influences we have in society. So what I'm trying to say is, as leaders, we have a responsibility to behave in a manner that befits the trust that the South African people have put in us to keep the country safe, to keep the country stable, and within the bounds of the rule of law. Finally, I just want to talk about a couple of things. The cost of living crisis, which is driven by unemployment, first of all, but secondly, the need to reset our ideas about spatial planning, about transport cost, etc., etc. So that's the one thing. We can talk about those policy issues. The second thing is crime. Colleagues, we have seen that the crime is happening in the police at the highest levels. I do not think it is possible to reform the police. We need a wholesale clean out of the police services. It genuinely is not possible to say you're going to see who is not so contaminated in the police and then you can solve the problem of crime. I'm sure we've seen that very senior people, generals, lieutenant generals, and brigadiers, they are in the pockets of criminals. And those are the cases we know about. What do you think is happening in Buffalo City and Nelson Mandela Bay and all of these places? So what we want to say is that leaders have a responsibility to infuse hope, but hope that is based on things that people can see, on decisions that Parliament takes, on decisions that the executive implements, on priorities that are clear, and an ability to bring the rest of society together with you. Those are the responsibilities of leadership. What we see currently is that profiting of people's misery politically has become profitable without the responsibility to place any meaningful solution on the table. And what we will not be compromising on is placing solutions on the table always, whether it is for the city of Johannesburg, it is in Gauteng in terms of economic growth, but also in terms of some of the policy matters. By the way, a lot of people know about the gambling issue now because of Makashule. There are parties for whom the priority is the president and the president only, which is fine. We must hold him accountable, but that's not the only thing that South Africans have a problem with. The gambling issue is quite serious, and we've got an MEC here who's responsible for the Gauteng gambling boards. So maybe she can start accounting. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mr. Z. We will open the floor for questions. We've got a second mic at the end there, if it could be passed this way. You know the name of the game. State your name, your media house, and who your question is directed at. We'll start with the first three hands. There's one at the back there.
Oh, am I first? Am I one?
Yeah.
All right. Good morning. Good morning, Brighton here from Netwerk 24. I just have a couple of questions. My first being to Mr. Gana on the Pala committee. Who will make the decision if Mr. John Hlophe will be serving on that committee? We know there's a bit of controversy around that. That's one. Then to the leader, Mr. CB, who must vote for Rise Mzansi in this upcoming election? Who's your voter base that you are targeting at this point in time? And then on the 30 million rand donation, or I don't know if it's a loan or a donation, can you maybe take us into your confidence as to who is We Are the People? I mean, who is that organization? And what influence do they carry over the party and in the direction that you move? And maybe just in general, as your funders, who do you accept money from and who do you say no to? And then on the immigration issue, I heard what you said, but people are angry, sir. I mean, calming them down, saying, look to the state is I don't know, it's a bit of a tricky one. People are emotionally charged. How do you see, calming people down around the emotion of the immigration issue? And then on the city of Johannesburg, how deep is that rot? Maybe just give us some context. Why are we seeing so many potholes here in Johannesburg and broken streetlights? Those are symptoms of systematic failure, or systemic failure. So what's really causing the issue? And then just lastly to Mr. Mnguni, is the Johannesburg Council too big? Should it maybe be split up into different areas to tackle the rot? Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. We'll take those set of questions and then we'll come to the second hand. Mr. Z, let's start with you.
Oh, sorry. I nearly spoke into these mics. Sorry, I didn't get your name properly. Brayton. Okay, no, I got the networks. No, thank you very much. So, I always say the people that had the foresight to elect people like us were Rise Mzansi voters. And the people that vote for Rise Mzansi are the people that want the quality of leadership that you see at this table, who are looking for solutions that we can back up with an explanation of how that would work, and who don't engage in, I think, in the theater of frequent political insults. Of course, I mean, that happens in the ordinary course. But throwing insults at a problem does not amount to a solution. So a lot of the people that voted for us said they like the fact that we propose solutions. We don't do the petty squabbling and so on. So that is the one reason. The second reason is that the people that vote for Rise Mzansi come from right across the ages, the age demographic, for instance. One of the reasons the DA targeted us in the squeeze part, in the get out the vote, is because they saw that older white people liked us, right? We didn't know that at the time, that was why. So we just couldn't understand why they were going for us, but that was a reason. So we find that we've got a wide voter base, from young, black, unemployed voters all the way to like ANC veterans and the like. And I understand one of them said people must vote for us at his book launch. I wasn't there this past week. So we've got a wide voter base. Let me talk about we are the people, because there is a mystery that we need to debunk. Okay. We took legal advice before the election on the kind of fundraising methods and support that would be acceptable in terms of the Party Political Funding Act. In the United States, they have things called PACs. You remember? PACs, Political Action Committees. Check the Electoral Act, the Party Political Funding Act. It does not disallow them at all. The Party Political Funding Act allows juristic persons to donate to political parties. That is why Michiel Leroux, by himself, with entities that he controls, has donated 58 million rand to the DA. The way he's done that is made sure that each of the juristic entities donates not more than 30 million as it is allowed by the Electoral Act. Now somebody could quibble and say, why do you have one person giving 58 million to one party? The law allows it. The law allows it. Have you heard us making noise about Michiel Leroux? Of course, absolutely not. So as a principle of what's legal and what is not, let's be clear. We Are the People is a juristic person that is allowed to donate within the limits of the Party Political Funding Act. So that is one. The second thing is we made several loans before 2028. We took out several loans before 2024 with We Are the People. We've been servicing those loans. We've paid just north of R1 million servicing those loans because the Political Party Funding Act requires that those loans are on commercial terms. I think you would have seen over the last couple of years that Mzansi hasn't had big donations. We've struggled to repay all of that money. When you have a situation where a debtor is not in a position to repay that money, you've got two options. You can liquidate them, in which case, as you can see around this office, there is no 30 million to find, but you're welcome to have a look around. Or you write off the loan. Banks do that, companies do that. It's treated as an impairment in accounting terms. The Party Political Funding Act requires that if you owed somebody money and they say you don't have to pay it anymore, you must declare that as a donation because it's a financial benefit. So let me be clear. This is not 30 million given to Rise Mzansi now. It's election time debt from previously. Why did we ask for a 30 million write-up? Because the legislation has adjusted the limit from 15 million to 30 million. So there's no money that's changed hands. This is a benefit because the loan has been written off. Now the question of who we are, the people, has been asked several times. I really would invite you to even go to YouTube and so on. They've donated to us, they've donated to the Good Party, they've donated to the UDM, they've done voter education, etc. before the previous election. They support social democratic causes. When you declare, the form is filled by both entities, the donor and the political party. Both of them must make attestations in terms of the origins of that money and so on. Now here's a peculiarity that happens. I've seen some donations there, some for the DA, where the entity is a series of numbers and a letter. You guys are not interested in asking them who those people are. I happen to know, by the way, one of them. But the donor is a number. The peculiarity is this, because it's Rise Mzansi, you have to ask the question. Who are these people? Where are the people as a website and a YouTube channel? You've got for another political party no detail at all, and it's fine. And they've given 12 million. It's okay. 1. 2, let us be consistent, guys. And this is our message to the IEC. Whoever believes that the MKP does not have sources of money other than the 270,000 they've declared so far, you also believe pigs fly. The reason nobody asks is because you know they will bully you online. You know it and you are scared. You also don't ask similar questions of the EFF, which declares almost nothing, because they will bully you online and you know it. The IEC, the same. They have said this past week they are not interested in investigating political parties that have all of these things but don't say what their sources of funding are. So we choose to declare this relationship with We Are the People. The other political parties don't do it, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. What that says to us, it's a disincentive from declaring in future. That's what it is. It's a disincentive. And I don't think you can blame, because the incentive is if you don't declare, nothing. The IEC was on TV this past week, they said so. They said unless somebody spoon feeds them information about where a party is coming from, they don't lift a finger. You can find the interview. They said it. So who is going to declare in that environment when the IEC says so themselves? Nobody. So I'm quite happy, colleagues, to have this discussion, but let us have the same energy with the other political parties. But we choose to declare. coming people down on immigration, you know. Yes. Oh no. They don't have influence. Look, I've spoken at length about the level of pressure and bullying we've suffered because of our stand on Palestine. We've lost many of those relationships. I've done lots of interviews on it. We've lost many of those relationships. In some cases, the people that used to donate to us have themselves been bullied, that used to support us, have themselves been bullied because of our position on Palestine. So we seek help from people we believe share our ideals. If they don't like what we stand for, then we can't have a relationship. I don't want to betray confidences, but some of the people that appear as big donors of other political parties were having conversations with us, but there were conditions. And we said no. And they went around trying to tell certain communities never to support us because we don't support what they stand for. I've spoken about that at length. So we're not going to do that and then there's undue influence from another organization. No. If you don't believe in what we do, and by the way, for this quarter, we are going to make more declarations. And I can tell you, only ourselves and the DA will declare meaningfully, the rest won't. I can tell you for certain. They won't. And we don't know what influence those dark forces have until they get mentioned at the Madlanga Commission. And then we are still afraid to ask questions because we don't want to be bullied. So go to Rise Mzansi. We are not going to bully you. Coming people down on immigration, you know, leadership is tough. There are times when we have to say and do the right thing, even if it's not popular. We really have to do that. And one of the things that's putting South Africa at risk is that we don't want to empathize with people, because I understand the sentiment. If you are queuing at a clinic and you think the queue, you could be only there for 45 minutes, but it's now 3 hours, and your child is sick, you are not going to be calm about it. Right? If you're looking for a peace job, and outside a residential complex as it happens, 80% of the people there are foreign nationals, you are now at the back of the queue, you're not going to be calm about it. So we are not blaming the ordinary people for complaining about the pain they're feeling. We are just saying the responsibility of leadership, though, part of the protection that you must ensure for the same people is that don't do anything that's going to land you up in prison. We have a state that has failed South Africans. It is the people who run that government, the ANC, over the last 30 years, that we have to take issue with and encourage South Africans to have a new government. As a leader, I can't say it's okay, because you know what? When something happens to my colleague next to me, what do I say? Right? So I hope I have dealt with that. So is there anything else, Pins? I think
how deep is the rot?
I'm not going to speak long, because we are with them tomorrow until about midnight. We'll start at 9:30 in the morning. We'll probably finish around midnight. Two things I'll mention. One, the low quality politicians from right across the board in the city of Johannesburg do not have the wherewithal to run a complex conglomerate structure. City Power, Joburg Roads Agencies, the Market Theatre, Joburg Water, the housing company, etc., etc., etc. They don't have the capacity. In fact, even the audit outcomes of just the municipal entity itself are worse than the entities they are supposed to oversee. That's one example. The city of Joburg spends, I think, on a combined basis, about 4% on infrastructure. They're supposed to spend between 8 and 10%. One of the things they do, they keep overestimating the revenue they're going to collect. And so they end up with an unfunded budget because they've got this delulu view of how much money they're going to collect on a financial year. And then they have to do an adjustment budget, but they've already committed. The last thing I want to say is the project management capacity, the contract management capacity, vis-a-vis the revenue problems is a problem. One of the things the Auditor General has highlighted is that some projects get halted because of cash flow problems. And believe me, when the supply eventually stops working, the debt is not outstanding for 5 days. It's outstanding for 90 days, 120 days, and the contractor stops because the city doesn't have money. That's why you need wholesale leadership at a political level to appoint the right administrators. And we'll have a coalition in Johannesburg, there is no doubt. And you need people who are sufficiently level-headed to make the kind of decisions worthy of a 100 billion rand organization. And we've had Palugas being mayor for too long. Thank you.
I can.
So we're going to keep doing that. It works better for us.
Okay. Thanks very much. So it was a question relating to Honorable Hlope, the former judge. So in the subcommittee on the review of rules last week on Thursday, where we're looking at the rules, we have referred the matter for a legal opinion. So the speaker will receive the legal opinion and will be able to guide the committee. So it's not up to the chairperson of the committee to decide who sits or does not sit in the committee. So we'll be guided by the legal opinion. So this, just to say, you might remember there was a court case on him serving on the JSC. So that's in the spirit in which the issue was raised. So the legal opinion will be able to guide the parliament and the committee in terms of his membership of the committee. So it's not up to myself as the committee chairperson to decide or not whether he stays in the committee or not. Will be guided from the Speaker's office. Thanks.
Thank you very much and good morning, media colleagues. Thanks, Beans. Brayton, you know, Joburg is not too big. You drive from Ward 1 in Orange Farm to the edge of Midrand, where Joburg ends for about an hour, 20 minutes. I mean, generally, that is a fair size for a metropolitan globally, if you look at metro cities. The risk with thinking of carving up Joburg is then disintegrating regions, and you end up with regions that have very poor revenue bases, and you effectively create bankrupt municipalities. The model for Joburg, the intention at least, is to make sure that you've got a super integrated city in terms of spatial planning, as Zibi was saying, and of course in terms of public transport. There is of movement. There is another conversation I am having with some people who have led in the city to make moving around Gauteng easier. And not just at a Gautrain level. There was even issues about a possible provincial transport authority. So that currently you can't have a city bus from Joburg getting into OR Tambo because that's in Equatorial and it's out of the jurisdiction of Joburg. Yet we know that a lot of people who work, who travel, and all of this come from Joburg, and they are in OR Tambo. So those are the things that I think we need a leadership that is just committed to a vision for the city and proper governance over the city. When you ask about how deep the rot is, we did a cleanup campaign in Ivory Park last week. And one of the questions I asked in the committee is, does Pick It Up come? I said, no. The truck comes, but the bins are no longer in use. for rubbish. So I ask, what is the problem? You know, the bins have been converted into water storage facilities because people don't know when they could have their at 135. So whatever redemarcation happens now, it's about delineation of boundaries of wards rather than creation of new wards. They've really maxed out at 135, and I mean the city of eThekwini is at about 110. So I think geographically, the city can work, because I think the question comes from a point of, is it too big to manage? It shouldn't be too big to manage. It has the revenue base, unlike a metro like Mangaung, where you drive from Bloemfontein to Duisburg and you're still in the same municipality. That's a very different scenario altogether. So I think Joburg can be made to work. And if you had a train and you didn't have to drive, you could actually shorten the 1 hour, 20 minutes on the road from Orange Farm to Midrand. You just need proper governance systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Hand at the back.
Thank you very much. Veronica Mahwadi here from Newsroom Africa. I think I'll start with you, leadership, just in response to the president's address yesterday, and particularly in the immigration crisis. He spoke about certain things, and I think you are reiterating some of those, which are system failures. But I think perhaps maybe a little bit of honesty is required, I think, for the people of South Africa, because this is not the first time South Africa has found itself at the verge of serious tension between neighbors, community members. We've been down this road before, where it turned violent, where it turned deadly. But when we speak about borders, I mean, the BMA having a 25% capacity, immigration officials, about 800 of them, to service the whole country. Is it just a systematic thing, or are we actually seeing a government that has shown no inaction, no care, and particularly not interested to those that are perhaps maybe bearing the brunt of this in particular communities? I think perhaps maybe we experience the situation of immigration very differently according to which part of town you are in South Africa. We've got the 30th of June coming up. Even in its rhetoric, what they are calling for in itself sounds incredibly violent and dangerous. To say, you know, those without documentation must leave. I would like to ask, what would that even look like? Even as a reporter myself, I'm even dreading the day to see what will that actually look like on the ground. How do we safeguard people, dignity, safety, and perhaps as even government and perhaps maybe even you bringing up what the safety plan might even look like on that day. And then perhaps to Ntate Gana on the impeachment committee, how are we going to ensure that the committee itself remains independent and free from party political influence? I heard you speaking about your experience, but there are some critics who say that your election as a chairperson could favor certain political interests. How do we take South Africans into confidence about this? As you've mentioned it, we've never seen this before. What can we expect? Will the committee as well be holding public hearings in terms of transparency? That's a big one, perhaps, that you can take us into confidence in. And also, how will the committee deal with the ongoing court cases related to Phala while conducting its own inquiry as well? I don't know if that will play a role at all. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Here in front. We've got two hands here in front, and then we'll get responses.
Thank you very much. It's Nkosinathi Shazi from Power FM News. Just three quick questions. If I'm not mistaken, Rise Mzansi is contesting its first local government elections. How realistic are you guys just with regards to your chances, particularly in Joburg, the economic hub of the country, a very contested space? We've seen your political opponents feel the likes of Helen Ziller and Herman Mashaba for the position of Joburg mayor. So how realistic are your chances for the local government elections? Second question is to the chairperson of the impeachment committee. Can you please just give us a time frame and what to expect going forward? When will it start? Just to echo on my colleague's question on, are there any impending litigations? Just the time frames of what is set to happen on this impeachment committee. And then finally to the MEC, of course, Mzansi has been championing the taxing of online gambling. Now, of course, online gambling seems to be a double-edged sword where it contributes to revenue collection. However, there has been a proliferation of online gambling. And of course, with the FIFA World Cup set to start this week, we do expect a rise in online gambling. But the rise of online gambling and gambling addiction, is it not caused by the socio-economic climate in the country? Now, according to the stats, most people that are on these online sports betting come from poor backgrounds. So is that not caused by the economic situation in the country, unemployment, and the need to get paid? Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I have some questions. Oh, sorry. Before we go online.
Dibakatsa from EWN. I just wanted to know, with regards to the Western Cape, or Cape Town rather, your candidate there, Brett Herron, is it from the Good Party? What is the strategy there? Are you expecting him to bring a coloured vote? I mean, in terms of the performance of the Good Party or the influence that Patricia de Lille has in the Western Cape, what is the plan there? Are you hoping that he will bring that vote? And just take us through that decision, please. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll just take some questions that we have online. Mr. Mnguni, you can stay where you are because there are two questions for you. The first is from Lizeka from Times Live. Joburg has a budget running into tens of billions of rands and employs thousands of officials. What practical management experience do you have that qualifies you to oversee such an institution? Can you name a large organization or public institution or budget that you have personally managed or that you have experience from, and why should voters trust an inexperienced mayor over candidates who have held executive office before? And then for Mr. Zibi, your party has campaigned as an alternative to the ANC, yet it helps sustain ANC-led government. How do you convince voters that Rise Mzansi remains an independent force rather than a junior partner to the ANC? If the impeachment process concludes that the president has a case to answer, would Rise Mzansi be prepared to vote against him, even if that position isolates the party politically or complicates relations within the GNU? And then, no, from Luyolo. Luyolo from Business Day. Oh, and then I've got a question from, that was from Lizeka from Times Live, from Luyolo from Business Day. Joburg is on its last legs. What will Lukhona do in his first 100 days to turn around the city's finances should he be elected mayor? Mr. Mnguni, we'll start with you.
No, thank you, Beans, and thank you to Lizega and Luyolo. It's a very simple issue. Political institutions require political leadership. The political leadership must be visionary, must be ethical and incorruptible. These are important criteria for a city as large as Johannesburg. One will not be here and list do a laundry list of which institutions and so on, but one has been involved in governance throughout life because of various employment stations and boards that one has sat on and so on. Funny enough, I was actually having a conversation with a serial, well-respected entrepreneur here in Johannesburg. I will not name him. And he said, your leadership makes sense to me because you are the kind of person I trust will employ capable people in the administration and not continuously meddle with the administration and allow people the space and the freedom to exercise their expertise and to exercise their talents without fear that they are going to be killed simply because they are doing their work. Doing your work now in cities, particularly like Joburg, has become so dangerous because politicians want to steal in the procurement ecosystem along with various insiders and outsiders from the city of Joburg. One thing that I can assure you is that I bring a level-headed temperament of being the elder in the room, despite not being the eldest. But being an elder in the room and not being involved in a lover's tiff of past relationships, which is what happens when you put Helen and Herman in one room. It just descends to chaos. That they embody a track record, but you have seen their squabble on Twitter and they shout at each other and so on. It doesn't inspire confidence in the resident of Joburg that these people are serious about the order of the day. What I bring is that steady hand, stability, level-headedness, and being able to put people across the room and foster a coalition that will be lasting to 2031. So that's where we are now. We're talking 2031. And then let's come to the 100 days. Luckily, when we get to council, because we will be in council and we will be in government after the 4 November 2026. Just let's be very clear about that. When we get to council, it will be an opportunity to work on the adjusted budget for the city of Joburg. The first issue is to ensure that the finances of Joburg are sorted and you've got a funded budget. Now that requires certain trade-offs and priorities to be on the agenda. One thing that we can't play around with, I have not had water at my place since yesterday, but I still made it here. I had to make some extreme, juggling to make sure. I did not go, no, I did not go to a hotel. The cost of living in Joburg is so high, I don't think I can afford to hire a hotel just for a shower. I had to make other means. And I don't have a Jojo tank, trust me. So anyway, the finances of Joburg, you need to get to a funded budget because that's what gives investors confidence. You can't thumbsuck your way through a budget in a city as big as this one. And you'll have to make certain trade-offs in terms of what you prioritize, but water must be at the apex of our priority in the city of Joburg. What I call a watertight water master plan is something that must be developed within those 100 days and implementation must start. By the way, there are enough goodwill people across the engineering sector, in the country, and across board, because you'll remember, a city like Joburg does also what we call city diplomacy. So it has sister cities that it can tap into for expertise on the water sector in particular to ensure that we leverage those relationships. The way you also deal with the issues of finances is you sort out billing in the city of Joburg. Because what currently happens is that the industry and high, bill payers in the city, because they are squabbling with the city of Joburg, they end up going to court. So you've got a double crisis where the bill is too high, a person is fighting the city in court, the city is also spending money it doesn't have on lawyers, on legal fees. And then the person is not paying because they are querying the bill. And then another bill comes, they are still querying the bill, another bill comes. So this billing issue, because that's where your revenue base is, your billing must be properly managed, your collection department must be properly capacitated so that you don't have debt that prescribes simply because the city does not inform people of the debt that they have to the city. So that's part of how you manage the revenue part of it. Then you need to come up with a clear way to stop the leakage on procurement. Because every move that is done is to try and frustrate and manipulate the procurement process until it gives an outcome that people desire so that they can eat in the city of Joburg. Part of that is to implement technology, but in the very first instance, one of the things that we will pursue as Rise Mzansi in Council is to get a resolution that says, whilst we are thinking of the technology systems in procurement, we just need transparency immediately. So you record all the bid evaluation committee meetings, all the bid adjudication committee meetings. When you announce a successful bidder, you publish both the video recordings of that particular contract and the transcripts that are related to that in the very first instance. Because if you don't try and achieve transparency in the process, people continue to do these things we have been in the Madlanga Commission, facilitated by the likes of your Sergeant Fanengosis, people not doing their work for the state, but actually doing the manipulation work to steal from the state. On technology, on procurement, you cannot have a situation, for example, with the development finances now, finance agencies, where your your pre-project phase, your project bid phase, and your project execution, and then commissioning of a simple infrastructure of about R1 billion takes about 10 years to get done. That can't be service delivered. We've got to shorten the timeline, and we can, with technology, artificial intelligence in the procurement system, one, shorten the timeline that it takes to adjudicate bids so that we can deliver services quicker. But secondly, have mechanisms where you can realize where the city is being fleeced, where people are inflating prices at 300%, selling something that should be 30 rands for 200 rands in some instances to the city. You are able to pick up those things, and you are able to throw off those kind of... We need to sort out the water situation, and we need to clean up Joburg. Joburg is filthy, dirt filthy. The pothole is important, but the filth needs to be removed in the streets of Joburg. You need to do road markings. You need to give the investors and the entrepreneurs the freedom to believe and think creatively that there is a government in office that is serious about doing the right thing. You just need to get the basics right. It's a pity that in 2026, a city as large as Johannesburg is still dealing with just the issues of basics, potholes, street lights, traffic lights, road markings. We should be talking about a future Joburg. That's what we should be obsessed about. This was the city of gold. It was the city of gold. There is no longer any gold. What should be the economy that drives Joburg? Why should Joburg sleep so early and wake up so late? Because of safety issues. You create externalities. You burden businesses with having to have security because it's unsafe. You burden communities with having to cordon off public roads. And drive around Parkmore. It's one of the worst neighborhoods to drive around. You can't even trust your GPS because the streets are closed off at every corner of that community simply because of one thing. People do not feel safe. That's why our campaign is very clear. We want to vote Amasela out and ensure that we build a safe and clean Joburg. Thank you very much.
Thanks. National Chair.
Thanks for the question, Shazi. The question was relating to online gambling, and I think you've raised an important point that gambling and online gambling is indeed, through the gambling board, it's indeed part of the province's revenue generation strategy. So one of the things that we've embarked on with earnest now is to make sure that we capacitate the gambling board, we deal with the governance challenges within the gambling board, and of course we also drive the Gauteng Gambling Amendment Bill so that we are able to actually maximize the revenue that can be generated from gambling and gambling activities taking place in the province. That being said, gambling itself and the scourge of online gambling presents a number of social harms and potential social harms. And this is actually why we have to ensure that through the gambling board and through the revenue that we raise, we are actually able to raise enough revenue to be able to reinvest into communities, reinvest into gambling awareness campaigns and activities, and ensure that we are playing our proper role as the regulator, as the gambling board. Now, this is an issue that Zibi correctly said was something that was really brought to the fore through the advocacy work and the work that Gana has been doing in Parliament for the last 2 years. This was not an issue that people were actually even talking about, but through the work that has been done in Parliament, it has driven awareness, but also raised the fact that we have a multi-billion rand online gambling sector. And gambling advertising has absolutely gone through the roof. And there currently is no way to monitor and measure online gambling and the advertising thereof. So one of the key initiatives that we are driving and that will come through now through the Gauteng Gambling Amendment Act is that one, we'll be able to capture the revenue from the increased gambling activities, but two, we'll also be able to regulate more effectively, understanding now that the nature of the gambling sector has changed. You also asked about the correlation between gambling and the economic conditions that people are facing, and you're 100% spot on. I mean, we saw the unemployment statistics that were recently published, absolutely that plays a role, and which is why we need to not just be presiding over dysfunction, but we really need to be having conversations and coming with real strategies about how to fix the social and economic conditions that people are facing. We have to have real plans around how to create jobs and sustainable jobs. And that's why through the work we're doing in the economic development portfolio, this is our absolute obsession. There's no shortcut to the many social challenges we are facing, whether it's through gambling addiction, alcohol addiction, gender-based violence, and all other manner of social ills. If we don't get the economy right, if we don't get people employed, get people working, get young people into employment especially, or into proper training that is actually able to yield them economic opportunities, we are heading for a crash. And so our work in economic development is really centered around that and looking at the big picture and ensuring that every rand that we raise through gambling revenue is reinvested into the activities that it's supposed to be used for, minimizing social harms, as opposed to finding itself in people's pockets. Thank you.
Chief Organiser.
Thanks very much. So the proceedings of the impeachment committee will be public in the same way that the ad hoc committee was public. So every step of the way will be public, and want to take South Africans along with us in the way that we do our work. So unless if there's something, and it will be an extraordinary request to hold hearings behind closed doors. One, the hearings to be open, and that's the posture that we will adopt in this regard. The second question that you asked in terms of the ongoing court cases, it's not in our control. As a chairperson, I said when I was elected that we are going to focus on things that are in our control. The work of the committee continues. There's work that's happening behind the scenes. We are preparing for our first meeting, which I intend to have it before we go on recess. So before the 26th of June, we will have the meeting of the impeachment committee. So that work continues. And I said this, that the work can only be halted or stopped when ordered so by a competent court. No lawyer's letter or anything that there's a case, unless the court decides that we should stop, we are continuing. We're not going to be stopped by anything other than that. In terms of being impartial, we will be guided by the rules. I'm the chairperson of the committee. I need to treat all members with respect, and that's you'll see in the way that we run the committee whether it was impartial. I don't intend to only look the side for those that supported my election. It's now 7 days. We don't need to go back there. We need to look forward. There's work that's happening. I'm now the chairperson of the committee. What people say or don't say, it's not for me. I have no control over what people say about me. They can continue to say so. We are working. We don't have time for what people who have turned themselves commentators are saying. We are working. So, Kosnat, the first thing that we want to do is to get the terms of reference of the committee. As you might have seen that the subcommittee on rules last week has given the guidelines in terms that will form the basis in which we come up with the terms of reference, but we'll also have the terms of engagement, how we engage with one another, how we interact with one another in the committee. Once that's agreed, and now we have the evidence leaders, because we need to agree on the process of appointing the evidence leader. You know, we don't. As I said, everything will be done in public, so you will be able to to see the process that we are going to embark on when we appoint the evidence leader. So it will not be something that's done behind closed doors, how the evidence leaders will be appointed. We want to make that as public, also allow political parties to have their say, nominate the evidence leaders. So we are going to pronounce on that process in the first meeting, so that this process is owned by the committee. As the leader said, I'm not the judge. I'm chairing the committee. The process must be owned by the committee. And I will ensure that every step of the way, the committee owns this process, so that at the end of the day, when the report is presented to the National Assembly, each and every member of the committee will say that they've contributed to the report. We'll only be able to give the timeframes once we have the evidence leaders, once we have the witnesses, once we have agreed in terms of the terms of reference and how we want to interact with witnesses, and once we have had a fair analysis of the documents that will be in front of us. So once we have the witnesses, we'll give a time frame. At the moment, it will be wishful on my side. So let's allow the committee to have its second meeting, where we'll deal with the terms of reference, where we'll deal with the process of appointing the evidence leaders, because it needs to be as inclusive as possible. And South Africans must feel included at all times when we do the processes of the impeachment committee.
National Leader, you can respond to the questions and give your closing remarks.
I can finally say in a case I'm Shamastul. So, Shazi, I just need to understand your question. You said we've got to be honest. I just need to be certain what you meant.
I think just as in terms of a reflection of how perhaps maybe lackluster we've been.
Okay. No. I said it. Remember, in my initial remarks, I said the ANC has been in power for 30 years. They've neglected two things, among many. One is they've not managed to grow the economy. It's in the doldrums, and people don't have work and that kind of thing. The second is I spoke about how the immigration system has degraded and fallen apart over time. So I don't know if beyond that I can. I'm not given to insults, so I can't take it beyond that, right? I have said it's the ANC, and if people want things to change, you've got to vote for a different government. It's not complicated. We can shout and say all of these things. It always comes down to voting. That's what it comes down to. So I said that, but I'm quite happy to repeat it. You know, Shazi, the second thing is, let me take you back just over a year ago. You know, when the budget was being fought over, there were two critical reductions in the fight about VAT. PRASA lost, out of, I think, the initial allocation over 3 years was about 19 billion. They ended up with about 11 over 3 years, 8 billion reduction. Home Affairs was getting 7.5 billion. They cut 3 billion out of it. That money that they cut was for security personnel in the border management agency, and people were happy about it because VAT was gone. I spoke to a lot of people. The March and March people, I've got friends in that thing. I said, you and I will talk in a few months' time, and you need to tell me you are happy, because they were dealing with VAT at the time. And then they started marching. I said, whoa. You were happy about the cuts in the BM. So here's the thing, and I've said this in Parliament. South Africans and South African politicians don't want to make choices about what's important. They want to fund everything to infinity, and there's never enough money. So we're terrible at doing any of the things we fund poorly. And one of those is border security. So unless we start making some choices and trade-offs, which I'm happy to discuss with you offline, we're always going to underfund everything, because we think the government can pay for everything. 120 billion to Transnet, 110 billion to PRASA, just those two organizations, 450 billion to transmission alone for Eskom. And. So, but the issue was a victim of the fight over VAT. You can go and check the initial estimates of national expenditure and check what we ended up with in July. I'm sure, Stay, you can remember, because you guys watch numbers quite closely. It was a victim of that process, and that's partly why we are now here. How do we safeguard people's dignity and physical safety? You know, it's a combination of things. I think we need to continue to appeal to South Africans. So I do online events on TikTok from time to time, and they actually typically have between 400 and 700 people. And immigration is always the number one issue. And when you reason with people in terms of the steps that you need to put in place in order to have lasting interventions on the problem, people get it. But it always comes down to the choice of conversation leaders want to have. We right now have leaders who want to profit off the anger. So people are going to die on the 30th of July and after. They will die. And the same people who are stoking the issue will condemn it and do so weakly. Quote me on it. People will die on the 30th. They will not take responsibility. It's cheaper now politically to say we want open borders and lie in that sense. It's a pity that I think it was Liz who spoke about the junior partner thing. It's a pity that she's not here, because I was going to ask her what she means by junior partner. And I don't want to compare other political parties, but let me do it for illustrative purposes. So my colleague here, Makashule, has been driving the gambling issue almost single-handedly in Parliament at least. There are other advocates outside Parliament. It's not just us, but in Parliament at least, to the point where the Treasury has produced a paper on this matter that people need to comment on. And I don't know when the comments close on it, but the Treasury, it's gotten to that point. It's coming out of countless meetings with Pakstow, with the DG of Treasury, etc., to try and get to an outcome. That's what we choose to do. You have political parties that ask a kind of questions like ministers' travel, the obsession with ministers' travel, that they must just do the meetings on Zoom. How many deputy ministers you have? Now, I agree that the cabinet is bloated. But, if that sort of thing makes you an opposition that is worth its salt, then that's the choice those political parties make. Let me ask you a question. Apart from Cyril Ramaphosa, what other issue does MKP drive? Name one. So we have a style of politics that says we're going to focus on solutions and doing the work within the context of where we're able to exert an influence. I'm chairperson of Scopa. Nobody has said we protect certain people. We don't. And most of them are ANC people, right? The chair here fired somebody who was hired under Lebogang Mail. Right. And so I'm not sure what people mean by being a junior partner. If we must say all of these silly things to get an interview and then move on, then we're not going to do that. That's not our politics. People ask you when you campaign, what do you do when you get elected? But am I going to go and tell them that we advocated for ministers not to travel? Okay, so I don't know, but she's not here, so I would love to. So what is the strategy with the colored vote? So Brett is white. He's as white as you'll ever get a white guy. So the opportunity you have in the city of Cape Town is being able to advocate a particular type of politics that Brett articulates so well. Let me make a couple of examples. You'll hear about the great audit outcomes for the city of Cape Town. You will not hear about, at least at a political level, about how even people who work for financial services institutions, for professional firms, simply can't afford to live in the city anymore. They have to live on the outskirts of the city. because you have a city administration that does not want to put policy instruments in place to make sure that you protect people who are starting out, people with young families, etc., etc. It's a real issue that people complain about. Brett has even a postgrad on this stuff, on new cities from the London School of Economics. Right? So that's one example of an issue. The second issue is spatial justice and spatial development. We've spoken about it for years. You can talk about land as a historical grievance only, which makes you radical. But you can also talk about land as the reality of urbanization. And that cities need to acquire land and acquire land rapidly. They need to do bulk infrastructure planning ahead of time. They need innovative solutions around housing. It's not we'll build you a house, it's we will make sure you've got access to housing. You need to talk about mixed housing development so that people live closer to where they work. I can tell you can go and mine his social media account. Brett talks about this stuff. He hasn't only gone to school for it. He's been a member of council. He was MMC for housing in the city of Cape Town before, by the way. So these, I know that in South African politics, it's always about these crude categories of whether you're going for the black vote or this or that vote. Brett is able to articulate this politics, and he's a great combination with some of our activists from RISE who've been fighting the same struggles long before RISE existed. So the symbiotic relationship there is great. Atoli Lenotyoala is a good councillor, by the way, in the city of Cape Town. We've been collaborating together for a long time. So it's not about getting the colored vote. It's about making sure that our kind of politics is represented. The final thing I wish to say is you need a combination of organizations who are going to talk about non-racialism and unity. Okay? Nobody does. The divide that's driven between colored and black communities in the Western Cape and the white community is insane. And that division is politically profitable for some people. That's why people like us were called foreigners coming to invade the Western Cape in the previous election. It's the racial fear-mongering. So we've chosen a campaign where you can demonstrate that you can have a white person who's highly capable as your candidate. You can have black and colored activists supporting that candidate. And we're doing the same thing here. How realistic are our chances? Final question. It depends, like the chances of what? So every party that has gotten to council has gotten through the PR vote. I don't know if you recall. It's a PR vote. And in a coalition environment, you get an opportunity to be in government or to chair an impeachment committee or to chair SCOPA or to be an MEC and make a difference. So it's about the proportion of votes you believe is possible to get you seats in council that put you in the conversation about forming a government and what the priorities of that city administration are going to be. I just need to deal with the issue of Mnguni's experience. I'm willing to buy drinks for everybody who will tell me what large organization Jordan Hill Lewis ran. And by the way, Jordan and I have a very good relationship, personal relationship. And I think he's a good politician, actually. And he's not doing a bad job as mayor of Cape Town. But these questions are selectively asked to delegitimize certain people. What did Nasipi run before? Nothing. I don't blame her, by the way. She's my mayor, I live in Swan. I also have a great personal relationship with her. Here's a lesson that we have. So some of these unrealistic fake categories that people put up in order to delegitimize should not be taken seriously. So one of Lukhona's strengths is an ability to have, he's got relationships right across political parties, by the way. And you can go and ask them. He does. He is able to moderate tough negotiations. I've seen him do it. He's able to bring people together. And what you need in a fractured political environment is somebody who can bring disparate parties together in order to have a coherent agenda. I've seen this man operate. You can ask even the political parties that insult us on Twitter today, they will tell you the same thing. He doesn't advertise it. Lukhona's maturity with those kind of things is beyond his years. But you know what? It's profitable to throw insults and, you can show that you are strong. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very, very much for your time on this Monday morning, now Monday afternoon. This is Rise Mzansi. It is a party that is at work. It is a party that is represented in government as well as the opposition benches. And it is a party that is set to change the face of local government working with the Good Party. We're not a party that calls press conferences for the sake of press conferences. So this is probably the last you'll hear from us in the form of a press conference until the 4th of November. We'll see you on the ground. We'll see you in communities. The MEC will see you in the work that she does for the people of Gauteng. The chief organizer will see you as he adjudicates the work of the impeachment committee, and we have the Scopa chairperson ensuring that the public purse is protected. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your Monday and the week ahead.
How are you, Mr. Gana? How are you? Good to see you.